Good evening and welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. I'm Pastor Mike Martin, and you folks at home have found First Baptist Church of Huffman, Texas. Glad you're with us tonight, and keep tuning in and spread the word, share and like and all that kind of stuff, because the more people that know, the more all that kind of stuff, it just sends it out to more people. So keep doing that. Tonight we're in 2 Samuel. And just so you know, next week I have a guest speaker that's going to be here. His name is Roger, and you'll like Roger. You can call him Mr. Roger, and he'll be here next week. But then also the following week will be I think it'll be our last one of the year because we have Christmas after that. So, but we're going to do something special. So you folks that are here, I hope you'll come back, and I want you to be ready. I want some of our folks at home to get to know some of you. And so I'm going to have different questions, and all going to be about Christmas. And we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas. So we're going to get off of 2 Samuel in 2 weeks, and then we'll pick it back up in the new year. But should be a lot of fun, and I think we'll look at some scripture, but we're going to have a good time together and get to know each other a little bit better. Tonight we're going to pick up in 2 Samuel chapter 14. And by the way, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving, and hope everything was good. I hope you had time with family and I hope that you didn't burn the turkey and all of that kind of stuff. Tonight, we're going to pick up the story of Absalom, but it's not just the story of Absalom. It's the story of Absalom and the division that we have between him and his father, King David. And so just a little bit of a recap. A couple of chapters ago, we had Absalom's half-brother. His name was Amnon. Amnon was the crown prince. He was the number one. Well, he raped his half-sister Tamar, and because of that, Absalom plotted and sought revenge, and eventually, after some time, killed Amnon in revenge for what he had done to his sister. After that, Absalom flees, and he goes up and he hides in another city, another town. And during this time, King David, his heart just longed for Absalom. He wanted his son back, but he never reached out to him. He never tried to bring him back. And it was a difficult time for King David. So as we think about that, we see in chapter 14 how God uses people in David's life to help him and Absalom be reconciled. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at about 20 verses of 2 Samuel chapter 14. And the first section, the first person that helps him is a woman named, she's just the wise woman of Tekoa. All right? So let's read this, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Now Joab, this is 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 1. Now Joab, the son of Zeruiah, knew that the king's heart went out to Absalom. So remember, Joab is his number one general, okay? Verse 2, and Joab sent to Tekoa and brought from there a wise woman and said to her, pretend to be a mourner and put on mourning garments. Do not anoint yourself with oil, but behave like a woman who has been mourning many days for the dead. Go to the king and speak thus to him. So Joab put the words in her mouth. When the woman of Tekoa came to the king, she fell on her face to the ground and paid homage and said, Save me, O king. And the king said to her, What is your trouble? She answered, Alas, I am a widow. My husband is dead, and your servant had 2 sons, and they quarreled with one another in the field. There was no one to separate them, and one struck the other and killed him. And now the whole clan has risen against your servant, and they say, give up the man who struck his brother, that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed. And so they would destroy the heir also. Thus they would quench my coal that is left, and leave to my husband neither name nor remnant on the face of the earth. Then the king said to the woman, go to your house, and I will give orders concerning you. And the woman of Tekoa said to the king, on me be the guilt, my lord the king, and on my father's house. Let the king and his throne be guiltless. The king said, if anyone says anything to you, bring him to me, and he shall never touch you again. Then she said, please let the king invoke the Lord your God, that the avenger of blood kill no more, and my son be not destroyed. He said, as the Lord lives, not one hair of your son shall fall to the ground. Then the woman said, please let your servant speak a word to my lord the king. And he said, speak. And the woman said, why then have you planned such a thing against the people of God? For in giving this decision, the king convicts himself, inasmuch as the king does not bring his banished one home again. We must all die. We are like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. But God will not take away life, and he devises means so that the banished one will not remain an outcast. Now I have come to say this to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid, and your servant thought, I will speak to the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his servant. For the king will hear and deliver his servant from the hand of the man who would destroy me and my son together from the heritage of God. And your servant thought, the word of my lord the king will set me at rest. For my lord the king is like the angel of God, to discern good and evil. The Lord your God be with you. Then the king answered the woman, do not hide anything from me, or do not hide from me anything I ask you. And the woman said, let my lord the king speak. The king said, is the hand of Joab with you in all of this? The woman answered and said, as surely as you live, my lord the king, one cannot turn to the right hand or to the left from anything that my lord the king has said. It was your servant Joab who commanded me. It was he who put all these words in the mouth of your servant. In order to change the course of things, your servant Joab did this. My Lord has wisdom like the wisdom of the angel of God to know all things that are on the earth. And so in this story, it's an intriguing story. Joab looks at David and he sees that David is longing for Absalom. He misses Absalom. He loves Absalom. But he's not doing anything. He's not doing anything to fix the problem. And we'll see this, and I'm going to talk some more about this, but David seems to have a problem disciplining or guiding his children. Now, this part that we've read, it really points out that the king is responsible for divine justice in the land. In other words, he is the one who judges the people, who makes decisions for the people. If you go over to the book of Deuteronomy in chapter 17, Deuteronomy is the 5th book of the Old Testament, but in chapter 17, starting in verse 18, it says this. It's talking about the king. And when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law approved by the Levitical priest. And it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes and doing them. So David, being the king, is now the one responsible for making sure that law and order take place in the land. And not just law and order, but God's law and God's order. And so we see that in this also, not only is he the well, the final say in issues, but we see in this again, just like with Nathan. Remember back in chapter 12, I think it's verses 1 through 4, Nathan the prophet told a parable. He told a story. And then David was like, tell me who that guy is. I'll get him. And Nathan said, you are that man. Well, here again, here the woman from Tekoa, she points out, you are the one who has done this. You're the man. And so Nathan used, Nathan and the woman from Tekoa were used to get David to make these judgments about how he should live and how he should act and what is right and wrong. Now, the woman from Tekoa, when she gets him to do this, just like Nathan, he ends up self-indicting himself. And so what happens is, there's no way around it. He is the one responsible for what is happening in the story. Now, Joab, it's interesting. It mentions Joab. Why does Joab get involved? Well, Joab, the general, he's very close to David, but I think there's more to it than that. There's some political things that are going on as well. Now, I think Joab probably cares for David as a friend. He's been with him since way back. But there's also the political part. He's very important in keeping the country on track. And so Absalom, because Amnon is dead, Absalom is now the new crown prince. And so with Absalom far away, if something happened to David, there's not a smooth transfer that's going to take place. Now, we may nod our head and say, yeah, that's true. However, we're going to see that for whatever reason later on, that bringing Absalom back was actually not a good idea. It actually caused a civil war. But that's kind of one of those things of hindsight and the blessing of being able to read the scripture. We know the story, how it ends, even as we're in the middle of it. So Joab probably gets involved because Absalom is the son of David, but he's also the crown prince. Now, David, he just seems incapable of disciplining his own children. And you may say, well, his children are men at this time. Yes, but he's still the king. And he still has this power over them. But it goes way back. Now, you say, give me some examples of that. Okay. How about when Amnon raped his daughter, Tamar, and David did nothing? He did nothing. I mean, Joab knows the heart of David. Joab knows that David loves Absalom. Absalom has killed Amnon. Now he's hiding in a different city, and he's kind of been banished from the capital city. So Joab uses the woman of Tekoa to push the issue upon the king. Now this woman is a wise woman, and so she has the understanding of what's right and wrong. She has the ability, and this is important, she has the ability to communicate this truth to the king. And she's articulate, she's persuasive, and she's wise. And through the story, she convinces David that it is acceptable to allow forgiveness, because David was not allowing it. And this is something that, as we use those kind of phrases, suddenly we've just jumped forward thousands of years into our own lives. Because sometimes we don't want to forgive people. But here she points out to David that it is okay to forgive. And it's a blessing. Now, let's read the next section. Let's read the reconciliation between David and Absalom. Okay? So starting in verse 21, it says this: Then the king said to Joab, Behold now, I grant this. Go, bring back the young man Absalom. So he tells Joab, go get my son. Okay? And so Joab is sent to bring Absalom back to Jerusalem. And Joab fell on his face to the ground and paid homage and blessed the king. And Joab said, Today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord the king, in that the king has granted the request of his servant. By the way, have you noticed all the flattery that's going on? The woman of Tekoa, Joab. It is okay to flatter people. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with what Joab and this woman are saying. Now, if it's a lie, don't say it, okay? I mean, you know, you don't tell a homely man that he's handsome, okay? You say you like his hair or something like that, but you find something you can like. But be honest, but flattery is often a good way to get an ability to communicate to somebody, okay? Because you're building them up at the same time you're conveying your message. And Joab said, Today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord the king, and that the king has granted the request of his servant. Verse 23. So Joab arose and went to Geshur, that's where Absalom was, and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. So he goes and he gets him. But look at this. And the king said, Let him dwell apart in his own house. He is not to come into my presence. So, David, he opens the door of forgiveness, but he doesn't swing it wide. Okay, there's still some issues going on here in the heart of David and in the relationship he has with Absalom. And then it says, the last part of that says, So Absalom lived apart in his own house and did not come into the king's presence. David said, He's my son. He can come back to the capital city, but he's not allowed in the court. He's not allowed in the palace. He's not allowed in my presence. All right? Verse 25. And this next verse is this is odd, this next section. Because it seems like it's just plopped here and like, why say this? But look at what it says. Now in all Israel, there was no one so much to be praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish on him. His toenails didn't even grow crooked. That's what that's saying. He is, he's, as Muhammad Ali would say, Absalom could say, I'm a pretty man, this is who he is. And people would look at him and go, look how handsome he is. Verse 26, and when he cut the hair of his head, for at the end of every year he used to cut it when it was heavy on him, he cut it. He weighed the hair of his head 200 shekels by the king's weight. There were born to Absalom 3 sons and 1 daughter whose name was Tamar. She was a beautiful woman. So it's talking about how as Absalom is maturing, he's growing his family, and people are recognizing him. And people like him. They see him. Now this is important because later on, that infatuation that people have with him is going to help him start a rebellion. Okay? Verse 28, it says this, "So Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem without coming into the king's presence." I don't know how big Jerusalem was, but it wasn't that big back then. And they all walked. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing that Absalom did not see his dad, or was not allowed an audience with his dad for 2 full years. Then Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king. So Absalom's there, and it begins to drive him crazy. David doesn't have him brought in. But Absalom, after 2 years, he says this to Joab. Then Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but Joab would not come to him. Why? Because the king said he's not to be in my presence, right? So Absalom sent a second time, but Joab would not come. Then he said to his servants, and this gives us a glimpse into the character of Absalom. You ready? Then he said to his servants, "See, Joab's field is next to mine." In other words, Joab owns some property next to my property. And he has barley there. He has a crop growing, right? Go and set it on fire. You say, well, what's the big deal? He burned his garden. No. He burned his pocketbook is what he did. This was money. If it had been, I know in Texas we have a lot of ranchers and folks that raise cattle. One of my cousins raises cattle. And it would be like going and shooting his cattle. It would be like going and burning down his place of business or whatever. So he says, set it on fire. So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Verse 31. Then Joab arose and went to Absalom at his house and said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" I can just, poor Joab, he's thinking, I got you back in Jerusalem. I got you, I did everything for you, and you burned my field? What's going on here? He goes on, verse 32. Absalom answered Joab, "Behold, I sent word to you, come here that I may send you to the king to ask, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me to be there still." Joab basically says, look, I wanted you to help me get in front of my dad, but you wouldn't answer the phone, and so I burned your field. Now therefore, this is what he says to him, "Now therefore, let me go into the presence of the king, and if there is guilt in me, let him put me to death." He says, I'm tired. We got to end this. We got to fix this. I want this issue to stop. Verse 33. Then Joab went to the king and told him, and he summoned Absalom. So he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. And the king kissed Absalom. That was a sign of acceptance. Okay? So Joab is sent to bring Absalom back. Absalom is away for 2 years. He burns Joab's field, but he does so in order to bring reconciliation. He does so to be in good standing with his dad again. However, there's a violent side to the crown prince. When he didn't get Joab's attention, he resorted to violence. What we're going to see is that this tendency in Absalom is going to get bigger. Okay? Now, a few points to ponder tonight. The cycle of unending hate and violence is still circling humanity today. Amen. Amnon raped Tamar. Absalom killed Amnon. David banishes Absalom. And it just continues. Right now, around the world, there are people that are at war with each other, and some of them have no understanding of why they're really at war. They just hate those people. And it's, you may say, well, name some. Okay. How about the Irish and the English? I mean, there's some stuff going on over there. What about the Israelites and the Palestinians? The Russians and the Ukrainians? There's stuff going on, and there's stuff all over. By the way, we need to be careful, because in our own lives, our own individual sins, if we're not careful, can contribute to disaster in our families, in our churches, in our working environments, and everywhere else we live. If we let that hate because of what somebody did to us continue, and we keep that cycle going, it just brings more and more devastation. And that's what we see in the life of David and his family during this time. Here's another thing. As we look at the story of Absalom and David, the longer forgiveness is withheld, the worse the consequences of sin can be for people. You may say, well, but we forgave each other. Okay, at the least, you still lost years of relationship. At the most, we see that there's some damage. Absalom has changed, and he's not changing for the better. And as we harbor bitterness, as we withhold forgiveness, the longer that happens, the more damage that can do to people in our life. And the more damage it does to us. And David had some problems because he didn't reach out to his sons. He should have been proactive. But that's also hindsight. It's easier to say that now. But David was in his world at his time. Here's another thing. Wisdom, thinking about the Lady of Tekoa, the wisdom based on truth delivered in an acceptable manner can change much in people's lives. This lady went to King David, and she used flattery. Oh, King, you're like one of the angels. I mean, this is the best turkey dressing I've ever had. You know, a little flattery can go a long way. And that's what she did there. But the way you deliver truth is very, very important. We had a man in our church. He's gone to be with the Lord now. But he came in to visit with me one time. And he just passed away within the last year or two. But he disagreed with something. I'm going to tell you, I had the best time listening to him disagree with me than I've ever had. I was like, man, I feel better after he told me how much he didn't like something, you know. It was an interesting thing. David, he's the king, right? David had this lady, she just comes in and flatters him, but he listens to her. He listens. She used flattery and respect to convince the king. Now, we're in a new kind of life from what most of humanity has had. Typically, throughout history, as people get older, they have more respect in their communities. We have an interesting phenomenon in America where there seems to be young people who do not want to give respect, right? Sometimes we think, well, they should listen to us because we know better. Anybody ever thought that? Me, I have. Can I tell you something? If we will respect them, they will listen. If we will love them, they will listen. It's okay if you have to remember, what's the main thing? Joab and the woman from Tekoa wanted David to forgive Absalom and bring him back. And that's what they did. There may be some people in your life that you have some issues with. Maybe they're younger, maybe they're older, but maybe you have banished them from your life because of what they said to you, what they did to you, what they did to one of your children or whatever. Look, let grace work in your life. Let mercy work in your life. And bring wisdom and truth to the table and let peace happen. The sooner you do it, the less long-term consequences you and that person are going to have. So, it's an interesting story. I wish this was the end of it because they accept each other. But it gets dark and dirty from here. So if you like drama, we're about to get into drama. This is Days of Our Lives back in Israel. But think about this tonight. If you have someone in your life that you've banished or that you consider them, they've hurt you in some way, forgive them and reach out to them. Love them. Life is too short. Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for this time. Thank you for your word. Thank you for the story of David and Absalom. Lord, thank you that one of the greatest men of all time, King David, you let us see the saddest parts of his life. Lord, thank you for being so real with us so that we can be real with you. In Jesus' name, amen.